abiogenic theory of the origin of oil and natural gas. In a nutshell, the abiogenic theory is that most oil, petroleum, natural gas, what we often call fossil fuels, are actually derived from primarily methane, which was trapped in the Earth when the planetary nebula condensed. So the mainstream Western theory of the origin of oil and natural gas is that when the nebula formed, it did contain methane, but it became the early Earth and other planets became extremely hot, and the methane burned, essentially oxidized to water and carbon dioxide primarily. And then in turn, that eventually gave us the atmosphere that we have, gave us life, and then living organisms produced oil and natural gas. They were trapped in sedimentary rock and sort of pressure cooked over millions of years into most of the oil and natural gas that we have. That's the source of gasoline, diesel fuel, heating fuel. That's all over the Middle East and Southern California and other places. However, there's been for a long time a theory that, in fact, the oil and natural gas formed from this methane, which then polymerized into more complex hydrocarbons that make up heavier materials, coal, oil, natural gas, etc. That theory is very closely associated with the late physicist, Thomas Gold. So Thomas Gold died in 2004, but he really championed and popularized this idea in the United States. He was very out of step with sort of the mainstream scientific theory, and late in his life he published a book kind of summarizing his theories about this called The Deep Hot Biosphere, The Myth of Fossil Fuels, which I've read. And he not only postulates that the Earth is full of hydrocarbons from the planetary nebula, not from fossil fuels, but in fact that these are oxidizing within the Earth and produce the heat inside of the Earth. So it's not coming from uranium trapped in the Earth, which is the mainstream theory, but there's actually chemical combustion at a low level going on deep inside the Earth. And that's why the interior of the Earth is hot. And also that in fact living organisms probably originated in this subterranean hydrocarbons that were there from the very beginning of the Earth. And so and indeed we do find bacteria actually living in oil fields and so on. One thing that's important to understand is generally it used to be the case that you would be taught that oil and natural gas came from plants and animals which had been pressure cooked. I remember that in school when I was a kid, but that's clearly false. The oil and natural gas, for the most part, that we find, and there is an exception I'll talk about in a minute, but it is full of chemicals called halpanides that come from bacteria. In fact, there's very little evidence, very little of the chemicals you would expect to see if plants and animals produced oil and natural gas. So the dominant theory today, the mainstream Western theory of the origin of oil and natural gas, is that bacteria, small single-celled organisms, were trapped in sedimentary rock hundreds of millions of years ago, and by some process we can't really duplicate in the lab, pressure cooked into oil and natural gas and coal and so on. The alternative theory has an implication. A number of implications of it would be that planets like Mars, the Moon, many bodies in the solar system actually must contain hydrocarbons as well inside of them. And that would naturally lead to the expectation that you'd get methane, which is the main hydrocarbon we're talking about, seeping to the surface of Mars, which of course is something we may be observing. So the Curiosity rover on Mars has been detecting methane intermittently for several years, just made the news yet again with a particularly high amount of methane. It's not really that much, it's parts per billion, but it was totally unexpected, at least by mainstream scientists. Again, if you believe in the deep hot biosphere and the ideas of Thomas Gold, you would expect to see this. It's likely that this would happen. And Mars would be a very good place to look for this type of methane or verify this theory. Now, there are many other ways that there could be methane in Mars. It could come from, Mars could have supported bacterial life, could still have bacterial life, and that was pressure cooked into methane, or in fact there are living organisms underground, or even some geological processes that have nothing to do with life that might produce methane. But the major point is this theory, which this is a good book on it. This is Thomas Gold's Deep Hot Biosphere, and it's a sort of semi-popular book. It's not very technical. It explains his theory, and he makes a lot of strong arguments in the book that, in fact, most of the oil and natural gas, coal, etc., that we're dealing with on Earth, that we find on Earth, is in fact of abiogenic origin. So he makes a good case for that. Is there really contrary evidence to what he presents? So he presents a number of fascinating things. There are actually a fair number of major oil and natural gas discoveries in non-sedimentary rock. No one would have expected them to have oil and natural gas, but they do. That's been known for a long time. There are a lot of those in the former Soviet Union because many people in the former Soviet Union don't believe the fossil fuel theory. But there are ones in the West as well. And so the point of this is that there is actually a lot of evidence for it, but the question you might ask is, well, is there contrary evidence? And yeah, in his book, Gold concedes that lignite, which is a type of coal, is almost certainly formed from naturally compressing peat, which is actually plants. This is not bacteria, and lignite is mined all over the place. And there's a lot of evidence, and keep in mind, Gold is very gung-ho his own theory. There's a lot of evidence that lignite in particular is actually produced by a biological process that is actually basically plants, not bacteria, that have been pressure cooked. It's worth noting it's one of the few examples where the evidence supports that the coal, if you will, is coming from plants or animals. The vast majority of oil fields that we've gone down into actually don't have plant material. They don't have plant chemicals from the membranes, from the constituents of plants. What they do have are chemicals called hopanoids and some other chemicals that are characteristic of bacteria, which
Right, shalom, I give it on praise unto Abashima Shabashima Kodash. The honors unto the apostles of great millstone, and our honest brothers will be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. The Baba body are coming out here to give you this truth for the grace and mercy of Yahweh. Bashima Hawa Shai Bashima Kodash. Giving all praise unto Abashima Shai Bashima Kodash. Okay, so we just seen a clip there, briefly going into the Western idea, and I think it's beautiful. It's a spirit, if you will, that he mentioned that was a Western concept, that oil, which is the main driving force for all of these different changes that you see out there throughout the four corners of the earth, namely the move to net zero, which is going to lead to a lot of people losing work, okay, which is going to lead to a lot of people losing their livelihood, okay, losing their houses, losing their homes, and also to the carbon credit thing that you're going to see popping up pretty soon, where your movements are going to be tracked and traced pursuant to the book of Revelations, the 13th chapter on the 16th verse. It's very interesting that he's associated that popular theory, right? The popular theory that oil comes from dinosaurs or whatever, which again, it's beautiful that he's mentioned that there's no supporting evidence for that when you actually assess the oil underneath a microscope and say, okay, if this was coming from plants, what's likely to be there? Okay, what other conditions, what's the other parameters, right, in order to make this theory work, right? With the exception of peat and all of that. And obviously he gave the example. So it's beautiful that he's associated that with the West, because also obviously within the West and also to China, which is part of the East, but also driven by a Western mindset, we see that there is a push towards the MLTB, okay, and they're going to use this fossil fuel idea to that's going to be a major part of that, okay, that's going to be a major part of that. But we understand from the scriptures and we understand from the precepts that in the end times, Esau's BS is going to be unearthed. And I'm not saying this is the 100%, truth and whatever. I'm not a scientist, okay? We're just men that bring out the truth, what we believe to be the truth for that. The articles that we believe are so associated with the truth, but we would have to, in the kingdom, all of these things are going to be revealed. That's what I'm trying to say, right? We can break down the scriptures and that's going to be on point. But these particular things that we don't know because we don't have the resources, okay, to be able to verify particular things, which the scripture says how we look through, right? We look through, right, the little bit that we got, roughly paraphrasing that scripture. We got what we got. Let's just deal with that. So what do we have? Well, we know it ain't no goddamn dinosaurs. That don't make no sense. Okay, the sheer amount of dinosaurs that you would need to have, right, is just too much. Okay, it's just too much. And we understand also, and most importantly, according to the scriptures, that it was going to be a move towards the MLTB. So we're going to be like sentinels looking for the reasons why Esau's going to be moving towards the MLTB, and the instruments that he's going to be using towards the MLTB, we're going to be breaking it down according to the scriptures and saying, well, no, you're telling lies. The scripture says Esau was going to tell lies. So we're going to be looking for these particular things and saying, okay, no, that sounds fishy. Let me go do a little bit of research. Or that sounds more logical, which what I'm going to read for you and what you just seen within, and again, there was bones within that. There was a few bones here and there, but that's all good. You're supposed to be astute enough to say, okay, that's applicable to the scriptures. That's not applicable to the scriptures. But a lot of the points that he was making was applicable to the scriptures. So you're going to pick the bones out with a lot of these articles, but this is going to be a little bit more in tune, right, with truth. Okay. If it's not, post it within the comment board. I'll take the video down. Okay. But I think this is more going to be on point. And we know ultimately Esau was put upon the earth to deceive, to lie, and to kill. So this is going to be Lord's will, right? A truth being revealed, so you can understand, okay? And then, let's get into it. So this is a scientific article that I found based upon the video that I've just seen. And really, this is based upon one of the statements an elder had made, which this whole dinosaur oil thing is false. So I just did the research and tried to find buzzwords in that. And, lo and behold, there's some buzzwords out there that's going to be needful for you to be able to find the research for yourself, namely biogenic, right? And what else? There's another word that he mentioned within the video. That's what you're going to need to in order to do the research. You're going to need that. But going into this particular article here, this is a scientific article, so there's going to be some words here that I can't pronounce, right? Even though I'm supposed to be somewhat of a scientist, right? There's gonna be some words here that I can't pronounce, so bear with me. And it's gonna be a little bit tedious, but I encourage you to go out there and read it for yourself. And pretty much what he had mentioned, I can't remember whether it was within that video that I've just showed you or another video that I was watching on the same topic where he was going into it. They mentioned that they was actually able to synthesize. Now, synthesize means you can make it in a lab, right? So you can synthesize particular things in a lab, okay? So they was able to synthesize, like you have synthetic diamonds, right? They was able to synthesize petroleum underneath these particular conditions that we were just about to read, right? But they've never been able to replicate it off of the Western ways that we've been conditioned to believe. Nothing. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That goes to show you that there's mainstream lies out here that people just be believing. Oh yeah, millions of years. Oh yeah, our pressure. But they've never been able to replicate that according to the video that I just watched, okay? Right within the lab. But what I'm about to read for you here, they've been able to replicate, okay? And they're going to go through it. I'm going to flip through it, some of it as much as I can. And again, like I said, this is kind of one of them tedious things. You got to really sit down and read it for yourself. And you kind of have to have a little bit of a scientific mind of what's being said here, because ultimately, what's petrol? It's hydrocarbons, okay? So it's long chains of hydrocarbons, right? Which is basically a carbon atom in the middle and a couple of hydrogen atoms within this surrounding that particular atom, and then it forms chains. That's why it's known as hydrocarbon. That's what petrol is, okay? So you need petrol and you need carbon. That's what you need to make petrol. And this is what it's going to explain it to you, that this is not something that's mystical, okay? This is not something that's hard for the earth to make. This is a natural process that the earth makes, and this is the point that inspired me to go out here and do the research that the elder had made. The elder said, look, man, this is natural. The elder out here within the UK, he said, look, man, it's natural. So I said, okay, let me just go do a little bit of research. Let me see if anything pops up. I was like, wait, hold on a minute. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the guy said, look, no, the petroleum, but dinosaurs, we ain't been able to recreate that within the lab. And I was like, man, God damn it, man, Esau's a liar. And then I watched the video a little bit more, and he said, well, this is, they've been able to synthesize these particular things within the lab. So this is going to be the process, right? If it's not, we'll do other videos on the real process. But this is going to be the process by which the Most High is used, okay, to make slime, which is what is known within the scriptures, right? The scripture talks about how they use slime to make, particular buildings or all of that within the ancient world. This is just a natural process of the earth. But Esau is going to use this particular natural process to bring about that MOTB with the carbon credits, with the, what else is going to be there? The carbon credits, right? The net zero thing, which is ultimately net zero is going to be net zero in your pocket because you're going to own nothing and you're supposed to be happy with it. Remember, when they're going to start taking your car away, right? In they're saying like 2030 or whatever, right? Probably ain't going to make it that far down the line. But in 2030, they're saying no more cars with engines in them, right? It's all going to be electric. Number one, there's not enough, right, materials to create electric batteries out there. They know that. So it's going to be a limited amount of cars, and it's going to be on a lease basis. In other words, you ain't going to have a car. What about the guy that was out there, right, and he needed his van to do a job? Okay, he was a roofer. Okay, he was a plasterer. Brother, that's a thing of the past, bro. That's a thing of the past. Okay, you ain't going to be middle class. Right, your dad was a builder, right? His uncle your uncle and your dad used to be builders, and he was able to make money, and then now you're up in the game. That's not what's gonna happen. Right, your uncle was a plasterer and his brother was an electrician, and they got money and they created a business. That's never gonna happen again. Okay, this whole thing is gonna be controlled, and one of the major instruments of Esau being able to push out there is gonna be the net zero thing. So this is kind of like an important discovery. Okay, so it's beautiful that the elder brought that out. And Lord's will, this is going to be of edification, to build upon his statement. So the theory of biogenic deep origin hydrocarbons recognizes the petroleum is the primordial material of deep origin. Okay, you see what it says there? It's a material of deep origin, right? This theory explains hydrocarbon compounds generate in the atmosphere of the earth and migrate through deep faults in the crust. Therefore, they form oil, gas, and deposit in rocks. Okay, skip to the next bit. What's important about this? Okay, so I need to read a little bit more of this. Thus, the accumulation of oil and gas, considered as part of the natural processes of the earth outgassing. Okay, it's natural within the earth. Okay, that's natural. Okay. Let's skip down milestones of the theory. So it's a theory. So they're saying, okay, in order for the theory to be true, what considerations do we need to take into effect? Okay, what considerations do we need to make in order for this thing to be true? Milestones of the theory, right, of abiogenic, right, deep origin of hydrocarbons, adequate pressure, donors and sources of carbon and hydrogen. Okay, so that's important. You need hydrogen, like I mentioned before, and you need carbon because you're creating hydrocarbons. You can have all the pressure, you can have all the heat, but we know material to cook the food. How you gonna cook the food? Okay, and a thermodynamically favorable, right, environment for the reaction. Okay, the theoretical calculation based upon the methods of modern statistical thermodynamics established that polymerization of hydrocarbons take place within this particular heat range, 600 to 1500 degrees Celsius. Okay, these conditions prevail deep within the earth, so that's that particular condition met. Right, I'm not going to read that. You can read that for yourself. Right, composition. So the donors for carbon. Where does the carbon come from? There's the reference demonstrates that the addition of minor amounts of iron can stabilize dolomite carbonate in a series of polymorphs that are stable in pressure and temperature conditions, right? Subducting slabs, thereby providing a mechanism to carry carbonate into deep into the mantle. So they say this particular what you call a molecule. Can I say a molecule? Let's call it stone, because I know dolomite is a stone. Dolomite carbonate, right, can be carried down into the earth mantle. That's what they're saying. So you got your carbon. Skip down for the hydrogen. Donors for the hydrogen. Experimental data published in the Nature recently, 2010, shows that water storage capacity in the uppermost mantle is dominated by pagasite and has a maximum of about 0.6 H2O, 30% pagasite at 1.5 gigapascals. So that's pressure, right? Decreasing by about 0.2, okay, 10%. Another possible source for the hydrogen is hydroxyl group in some minerals, boratite, I can't pronounce that word. Okay, so that's it. So you got the water, you got the water, right? And you got, I'll say, variations of that particular of water, right, being carried down. You know, again, like I said, look, I ain't some super deep scientist. You know, I did a little key stage here and there. You know, okay. But as you can see, you read the article for yourself, and you can say, oh, okay, yeah, that's making more sense. And they show you the pressure. They show you what's available within the pressure. You know, roughly looking at this diagram, you can see that it's possible. All right, thermodynamic conditions and obviously heat and pressure and all of that. And they say on the depth of 100 kilometers, temperature is about 250 Kelvin, okay, and the pressure is 3 gigapascals. Both donors of carbon itself, CO2, and hydrogen, water, hydroxyl groups of minerals are present at the ionosphere with insufficient amounts. Thermodynamically favorable environments, reducing conditions could be created by presence of iron oxide. The presence of several of iron oxide, which is in the rocks, that's there. You know, within the Earth's crust is iron, is basic and ultra basic rock of ionosphere is documented. Thus, this is the important bit. Thus, abiogenic synthesis of hydrocarbons can take place in basic and ultra basic rock of the ionosphere in the presence of iron oxide. Okay? Donors of carbon and hydrogen. The possible reaction of synthesis is in this case, right, could be presented as follows. Reduced mantle substance plus mantle gases, oxidized mantle substance plus hydrocarbons, or the combination of chemicals of methane hydrochloride or something like that. Okay, different combinations of these radicals define all scales of oil, right? So all of these combinations define all scales of oil and gas hydrocarbons and also cause close properties, right, and genetic similarities of oils from different deposits of the world. So they just proved it to you, right? They've just proved it to you that this is possible. Experimental results. One of the first reliable and reproducible experiments resulting in confirming the possibility of hydrocarbon synthesis hydrocarbon synthesis under upper mantle conditions were published, right, in 2002. The author, right, here's the author, Salakia, right, the stainless steel and platinum capsules with the volume of, they go into it, right, the treatment, just give me the results. Okay, here's the experimental synthesis. Okay, they give you the code there. What else can I read from this? And then you go to other articles, right? Here's the examples. So, can I get a conclusion here? I mean, we're already seen, right? We already seen the conclusion. So let's see if we can go to a conclusion. This is like a proper deep study. They went into it. They really went into it. Right, they go. They went in. So there's plenty of examples there. Let's see if there's a summary or anything like that. We'll just read the summary and close out. Right? They really went in. Conclusion. Geological data presented in the chapter do not respond to the main questions related to the hypothesis of biotic petroleum. Okay? Only the theory of abiotic deep origin hydrocarbons gives convincing explanation for all the above data. Ooh, there you go. Right, so that's it, man. So read the article for yourself. I'll put it in the description. You can see it checks out. Okay, it checks out. So with that, I'm gonna say all praise unto Yabashi Mashai Bashi Mukwa Hakodash. Right, double honors unto the apostles of Great Millstone and honor you brothers that be pushing these truth in sincerity. I'll see you on the next one. Shalom.